I really, building a team is hard. Any questions about that? Like, that's really in a sense, that's really kind of what I want to say to you. And the way I want to frame this is in this word that just came to me yesterday, like tension. Like when you're on a team, you are in constant tension. And I want to unpack that in just a second. As I talked to church planners last night, we had a bunch of guys, about 50 guys over at one of our elders' house that we were, processing and encouraging. And I heard this story 3 times of, kind of the gory side of what we're talking about, which is when the team breaks, when there's sin in the camp, when that person that you invested in can't do the job and you have to have the hard conversation. Like those stories last night and the pain of all that. So I can't even tell you, I talk in front of a lot of people a lot, and this topic, honestly, I am so sobered by, because there's nothing more wonderful than a great team. And there's nothing more terrible than when a team breaks. And I know when you're listening to this, and I know that you brought people, I know there's going to be heartache and there's going to be pain in your team. And there's going to be struggle. And so as exciting it is, and I was inspired by JB, and I don't know if there's anybody better at helping frame that up and, put the cookies on the low shelf so you can go, oh yeah, I can be a leader, and it is inspiring to talk team, but the reality is it is very difficult to build and lead a team. It may be the hardest thing that you do in ministry. Honestly, the preaching that we value and is very important as we open God's Word, we stand behind the sacred desk or the sacred music stand, and we share, God's Word, and we preach it, really important. It's not that hard, though. After a while, and some of you are like, yeah, it's real hard right now. After a while, the more you preach, the more you study, the more the leading, shepherding people, some of us struggle with that, but most of us, it's natural to talk to people in crisis. It's easy to connect, but man, to lead a team with people who are smarter than you, people who are more gifted than you in certain areas, and to submit to that, but to lead that, and to have the hard conversations, but not have them at the wrong time, and what all that looks like. It is really, really difficult. And most of you are dealing with volunteers. And so, that's a whole nother dynamic that we can, get at in the Q&A. So I'm going to set us up here, and JB did a great job with the biblical basis of team. And if this whole honoring thing that we're talking about, constantly you see throughout the Bible, leaders honored, right? And so one of the things, even as I'm talking, I would like you to pray, what would it look like specifically, Lord, what would it look like specifically for me this week or even today to honor my volunteer leaders or the people on my staff? What would that look like? What would make them feel loved? What would it look like for me to encourage them and honor them? Because throughout Scripture, we see this. Exodus 18 is probably I don't know if it's the earliest burnout. I don't know, but Moses is a disaster, right? In Exodus 18, and he's got this father-in-law. Wouldn't it be great if we all had, guys in our life like this? And I love the way Jethro approached Moses. He basically watched him lead, and then he said, and by the way, this is what we can do for our leaders. This is why in a second when we talk about delegation, one of the biggest temptations you're going to have as a leader is to abdicate, not delegate. And this was my sin early on. I was so freaked out by the growth of the church. We were, if you can imagine how dumb this is, but we started the journey in 2002, which is basically the same year that Acts 29 started. And I was kind of on the ground floor of the leadership then. So I'm trying to help Acts 29 get going, and I'm trying to help the church get going. And oh, by the way, we have 2 kids with 2 more on the way. And just for fun, I thought I'll finish my doctorate degree and I'll write a few books and I'll just ridiculous. And so what happened is, even as in that time when I had a lot more energy, and I love what JB said, like your energy is not always going to be what it is. There are ebbs and flows to that, and as you get older, it's more challenging. Back then, I had all the energy in the world, and I was a humongous, capital E extrovert, and so I could handle lots of people, lots of responsibilities, seize tons of opportunities. But what happened was the church got shorted because I gave people stuff to do, but I didn't give them the tools to do it. That's called abdication. And so that is going to be one of your huge temptations. And some of you are so fearful of that you won't give anything to anybody. And I think maybe that's where our boy Moses was, right? That he didn't really trust, or he didn't think, anybody could do it like him. And Jethro said, listen, man, you're going to wear yourself out. I mean, these people, this is morning till night you're doing this. And so he began to deploy teams of people to lead. And he began to invest personally in his successor, Joshua, right? And so I think that is the challenge and the opportunity of team is to delegate, to really find people that we can trust and that we build into. And really, early on, and even in some talks I did, I went back to some of the talks I've done. We've done these events. We took about a year off. But we did some form of this. It started in my basement, actually. We did this for 8 years. And I started looking back at some of the talks, and I was like, oh man, I blamed our team a lot. You ever do that? Somebody asks you how the church is going or how many you're running, and you're like, well, it'd be great. Our worship's kind of, we don't quite have the right guy, and sorry, worship guys. We don't really have, our facility. There's always something to blame. And what I realized in preparing for this talk is I did that a lot. And one day what's going to happen as a leader is you're going to find a mirror and you're going to realize that you picked these people. And they gathered around your vision. And so there's some responsibility that we need to take in this. We get a lot of credit, lead pastors, when things go well, right, in the church and in our ministries. And we're the product of a team for good or for bad. Now, speaking of focusing on us, let me talk to you about your first team real briefly, and then I'm going to get into some of these tensions. Your first team is your wife and your marriage. And it was God who came and said to Adam, it's not good, right? It's not good for a man to be alone. I'm gonna provide a helper for you. And so Adam and Eve come together, and we see in the very beginning of the Bible, even before, and I don't know how you get at this theologically, but even before sin entered the world formally, and we know 2 Corinthians 11:3, 1 Timothy 2, Eve is the one who sinned. It's very clear. She was responsible, but somehow, Romans 5, Adam is accountable, right? So Adam is accountable, Eve is responsible, but even before the act of sin, there was disconnection in the marriage. They were disconnected relationally. I mean, think about what's happening in that text. Eve is talking to Satan, and Adam is somehow okay with that. He's letting his wife have this dialogue. Now, did he know that the serpent was we don't know all that, but Adam should have thought, wait a minute, they're having this discussion, I should be in this, but he just kind of was there. And then they're disconnected theologically because whether she added these words or Adam had added those words and taught her that God had spoke directly to him, but we shall not eat of the fruit of the garden, neither shall we what? What was her addition? Neither shall we touch it. So they were disconnected relationally, they were disconnected theologically, and then they were disconnected missionally after the fall. Before, naked and unashamed, nothing before them and one another, nothing before them and God, and then they run from each other and they run from God, and God has to now, who become the first missionary, when Adam and Eve were called to fulfill the cultural mandate to rule over God's creation in God's name, God's coming after them, and I've got to rescue you now And so they're off mission, they're totally a mess, and a lot of problems that you're going to have as a lead pastor with your team has nothing to do with your church team, it has to do with your home team. Because if mama ain't happy, right, nobody's happy. And early on, when we moved to St. Louis, we lived about 10 minutes from this building. And our car got stolen like the first few months, and it was kind of a neighborhood that was kind of undergoing a new identity, but it was kind of a not exactly a safe place. And my wife cried every day for the first 6 months we were here. We left this nice, comfortable setup in Kansas City with a good school and a nice house with a comfortable church job, and we move here. And really quick, I'm like, oh no. I mean, that's not a good sign if your wife is crying, every day, and you're trying to plan. We didn't have people. There was a parachute drop. So I'm people in the church, that I might want to be, non-Christians, people that were trying to, and my wife is like excusing herself to go to the bathroom. I mean, it was hard. And she is really kind of shut down. She's a high introvert as well. And so people, like a lot of people, and having, like some of you, you're, as JB says, your introvert is in distress in these kind of situations because you're having to talk to people that you don't know. And well, that was, just imagine, so she's already kind of depressed. We just had our first child. And then she's not available like she was previously in our marriage. We've been married a long time. We've been already married like 8 years, but she just kind of changed her. And so I got to go find a team, right? I got to do what I'm supposed to do. So I got to go find a team, but my buddy, my best friend, and I are disconnected. So when that's happening at home, see, you're made to be connected to your wife, right? You're made, she's your best friend. She's the one that man, you care most about. You want to know what she thinks about your sermon before anybody else, right? She is, what matters to her is what matters to you. And we're just a little off for the first time really in our marriage. And so I'm building a team. Now I can say this looking back, I didn't know this then, but I start building a team to shore up the kind of relational disconnection I'm not spending and having with my wife. So I start gathering people around me that believe in the church, but also are fulfilling this thing in me that I'm not getting at home. It's a very dangerous place to be. But in the early days of our church, that's the kind of dysfunction I was operating out of. So then the church begins to grow, things get better, but we just have some weird, you'll get to these tiers of relationships, and we can flesh this out in the Q&A, but you'll get to these tiers of relationships where what this person got you here, but they're not going to get you here. And I mean the church. I'm not talking about you and building your own personal ministry, but them in that position is going to hurt the church. And you have to then make a call about that. Right? So then you start making those calls, and it will be wildly unpopular because you have these people, especially in the early days, they're sacrificing, they're working for nothing, or they left their job and they're working for peanuts. They're working 50 hours at their job, and then they're coming and working about 20 hours for you, and you got to tell them they can't do their thing that they love. Right? So that happened 3 or 4 times, accompanied with the fact that, and I'll get into this, I kind of pulled back relationally just because of burnout, my own sin, and my own refusal to really get help. And I just said, all right, this is what I said in my head. The church is bad for my family. Church is bad for me. So we're going to kind of circle the wagons here. And I'm going to continue to lead, but I'm not really going to give myself that much. And I'm sure not going to continue to put my wife in situations where she's betrayed, where she's gossiped about. I'm not going to have another relationship that my kids are in with one of their friends whose parents get sideways and leave the church, and they lose yet another friend. So we went into this thing of just kind of circling up and saying, you know what? We're just going to kind of home team it for a while, and we're going to kind of avoid the big bad church. If you would have told me when I started the church, if you would have told me when I became a Christian, when I studied and did all the, if you would have told me that I was going to be that way, I would have laughed in your face. I would have thought that was the most ridiculous, and it's exactly what happened. Because I didn't know how to orient my family with the church. I didn't know how to do family and church. I didn't know how to suffer well with my kids when they lost their friend. I didn't know how to pull back and attend to my wife. I didn't know how to do all that. So, one of the best things you can do is you need to get with your spouse. Some of you ladies are here serving vitally significant ways in your churches. And you need to get with your spouse, however that works, male, female, female, male. You need to get with your spouse and make sure things are cool. Just make sure, hey, I went to this leadership conference, blah, 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 it's awesome and wonderful. You need to make sure home team's good. All right? Everybody cool with that? Everybody sufficiently convicted? All right, we'll move on. Let me talk to you about some tensions, and then honestly, the best part of these deals is hearing what questions you have. Did we talk about the tweeting and the how we get all that? Did we do that yet? If you want to ask questions, please right now use these. Text in, tweet in, however you want to do it. But ask your questions about what JB said and what I'm saying, and then we'll have a microphone as well. I want to talk to you about these tensions that you're going to encounter. Now, these are not problems that you're going to be able to solve. These are tensions that you're going to have to manage. So in a sense, this could be like a false dichotomy, like one versus the other. I'm not saying it that way. What I'm saying is there is tension in between these things that I'm going to mention. All right? So the tension, the first one I'll mention is community versus productivity when you think about team. So I'm going to give you the tension, and I'm going to give you the question that you and your team need to answer, okay? Community versus productivity. The question you need to answer is, what is your definition of community? What is your definition of community? Do we have that on the screen? What is your definition of community? There we go. You've got to answer that question. Now, I came out of a church that was a great church, but community amongst the staff, amongst the team really wasn't there. So I came with a lack of community. And so I defined community, whether it was, we had our vision statement, and so we defined it there. But you can have it on a website or on some kind of packet you're trying to get to, so people will give you money. But practically, you have a definition that your team is operating in, no matter what you say. Our definition of community early on was we were together all the time, always. We had people living with us. We had stuff at our house all the time. We were constantly, every night of the week, it was just like, it was just all out all the time. And the problem with that was, even high extroverts like myself, you get burned out on people. Now, the other thing that happens is when you're in that kind of proximity with people all the time and you're the lead person or you're leading a team, you are going to have to shepherd all these people. They're there for the mission, kinda, but they're also there for free counseling. You get this, right? They want to know what God's will is for their life. They want to know how do I be married? Like they want that, and you're there. And so it's not just we're hanging out and we're a community on mission. We're not a mission, a community. They're wanting to interact. They're going to pull from you, and that's a good thing. But if for me, what happened was I just over shepherded. Like I lost all my shepherding brain cells for a while. They just burned out, right? So community, and then so you want to be together, and I say it this way: you want to be together enough because you're like, how much is too much? You want to be together enough to where people can say and believe that they're believing the best about one another and that they're willing to wade through the worst. When that's happening, the community's good. But on the other side of it, there's productivity. Like these people that want to hang out and get free counseling, and they got to do something, right? They got to produce something. They got to like actually make something happen. And this is where I totally miss the mark, because it's very difficult for me personally to transition from shepherd to manager. And early days, we didn't have any money. We had a lot of energy, not a lot of money. And so I'm sitting there and we're hanging out, and I'm realizing I'm getting more and more angry because I started pulling back from a little of the community stuff just because I couldn't be out that much. And we had another daughter and had 2 kids. And I realized everybody's still hanging out. And I'm hearing stories that I wasn't a part of, and that's awesome. But then I'm starting to go, we got to get some stuff done here. And you guys are hanging out all the time, but you're not we're not accomplishing anything. And so you're going to have this tension of, okay, how much community is necessary to make sure that we're also productive, that we're also stewarding the gifts that God has given us. And if we're taking a salary from the church, that we're willing to stand before God with how we're using our time. A lot of lazy people go into ministry. A lot of even your volunteers will use ministry, right, in inappropriate ways. And so you've got to have that tension between, okay, how much do we hang out? How much do we get done? And the way that you can regulate this, and this is just something we've done, there are times to hang out, there's times to have meetings. We do a ton of retreats now. We do a ton of retreats. And a retreat is fun, but it's also focused. And so you need to learn how to get in some rhythms of retreats where you're able to hang together and maximize that time. As your families get older, as people have kids, you're not just going to be able to hang at the pub or go to the coffee shop or watch the ball game. That just becomes unrealistic for people as their life evolves, right? And as their families grow. It's not going to happen. But you got to figure out focused times, because that tension, community versus production, is going to be huge. And you'll find yourself like me if you're not careful, bitter, because everybody's hanging out and everybody loves each other, but we're not really getting anything done. And that's a constant check for those of us in ministry. Constant check. All right? Another one is vision versus execution. My goodness, this one's hard. You plant a church on vision, but at some point you got to ask this question: how much of the vision is actually happening? Right? That's the question. How much of the vision is actually happening? Early days, and I was just like you, man, every new idea, every thought I had, I was convinced God gave it to me. Anybody like me? Like, if it's in my head, so the Lord put it there. I mean, of course. And so we would get going and on Darrin's thought from last month, and we get going down the road, and then Darrin would have a new thought. And Darrin gets bored with old ideas, and this one's obviously better, and the Lord is going to upgrade us, so we're going to go over here, and then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to, and after a while, our staff just stopped getting excited about anything. Because they're like, this thing's going to change. It's going to change. And so it affected their morale. It affected their productivity. And it was just like, well, which way is the wind going to blow this week? So you have to execute on your vision. One of the things that we've done in recent years, and you will do this as a church, you will see that the stuff that worked doesn't work anymore. We started seeing this with membership, and actually, we've seen it like 2 or 3 times with membership, that it's just broken. Like, our vision for membership has never changed. We believe that people ought to be accountable in the local church. We believe that people ought to be trained as missionaries through the local church. This is what we try to do with membership. But our vision was not actually, it wasn't being produced in people. So we've had to flip it. We've done the same thing with community groups. We've done the same thing with, right now with evangelism. I mean, right now at the Journey, we stink at evangelism. That used to be our deal. But overall, I mean, we are just not seeing converts like we believe, we're not fulfilling our redemptive potential there as a local church. So we are going back and going, okay, we have this great vision, and we're here for the community, and we're preaching the gospel, and we're not, we're doing contextualization. We're not trying to, use worldly means, but we're trying to communicate with terms that people can understand. I mean, we got all the theology, we've got the vision, but it's not happening, right? So what do? We've got to go, all right, this is our vision, but what's really happening? And being brutally honest about that. On a team, you're going to have people who all they want to do is talk about ideas. On a team, you're going to have people who all they want to do is take a big, wet execution blanket and then put it on every idea. Well, that's a great idea, but here's what we're going to have to do that one. Somehow on your team, you're going to have both of those people, and you're going to have to get them to play nice together. And it's very hard, which is why most teams either have one or the other. A bunch of visionaries dreaming, or a bunch of people that are focused on execution and implementation, counting beans, right? And you want, and that's a very derogatory term towards implementers. Sorry, I did not mean it that way. What I'm saying, after I said that, I'm like, ooh, Darrin's got his vision hat on today. You've got to have both, right? You've got to have both. And you've got to have tension between them. There are times and there are seasons where a good idea is not a God idea. And an opportunity that would propel the church forward will actually kill the leaders in the church. You can grow the church, but kill your leaders. Where are you going to be? So you've got to have that tension between vision and execution. A vision is a dream about what we would love God to do. And what execution, that's a dream with a deadline. And vision without implementation, vision without execution is hallucination. You're just like kind of out of your mind, and oh, we could do this, and oh, we could do this, and oh, we could do this. So maintain that balance. And it's going to be hard. And if you're a lead pastor, you're going to hate implementers. Because they're gonna crush your ideas and make you focus on what you can actually do, and they will do this to the glory of God and to the forward progress of the local church. So you need those people. Now, what happens to a lot of churches is as you get stable, as things get going, and this is what we're seeing in the Acts 29 network with churches that are 5, 6, 7 years in, they get kind of a stasis, they get kind of comfortable, things are kind of leveling out, and you start looking in, and they've surrounded themselves with people who are just kind of focused right here. And so you've got to watch that, and you've got to keep your eyes up. God, what are you calling us to do? But what can we reasonably do? How much of our vision is actually happening? Strategy versus prayer. Is God being invited, is the question, to shape our strategy? I didn't say, did we throw him a bone in a prayer before we started the meeting? Right? Is he really invited to shape it? Are you willing to start off strong and be convinced that this is what you're doing, and then discern the Lord's stop sign? We have a good positive example of this in our church. We started kind of feeling like, okay, this is a time that we could raise some money. We're really excited about this training partnership with Midwestern and training the next generation of leaders. And we've got some facility stuff, some staff stuff, and just some stuff we want to do in the city and beyond. And so we brought some consultants in. They're like, they did all these, metrics on how much we're giving and the potential, and we had all these meetings, and they're like, this is the time. You got to do that. Like, you guys can raise, I won't even tell you the amount. It gives me a heart attack to think about it. You guys can raise this amount, millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars. And I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? Well, they've got this whole system, because that's what consultants do, right? So they do this, and you do this, and you do this. And some of our friends in other churches have used these guys, so we trust them. And so we start down the path, and 2 or 3 of our leaders, including myself, just felt like the Lord said, no, you need to stop. You need to stop. Because this is going to get in the way of one of our priorities, which is discipleship. Some of you have been in churches like this. You focus on the giving, the capital campaign. It totally distracts the church. And we felt like that was going to happen to us. And the reason why is we had and me, I was just out of fear. I don't think the Lord had anything to do with it. The other two leaders, actually, I think the Lord spoke to. All right? And they're like, listen, I just think this is the right idea, wrong time. That thing has been pushed back now a couple of different times. So maybe we're just afraid to raise money. Or maybe God has a specific time that this needs to happen. So we have a strategy. This is informed by our ministry plan, the priorities that we feel like God has for us. But what does it look like on a team to have that, to be passionate about? You went to the 3-day retreat, you attended the workshop, you read the book, you lined everything out. There's whiteboards that would go halfway around your city with stuff you can't even read written on it, but you can read it. You got the strategy. What does it look like then to say, all right, Lord, we've got this, but we hold this with an open hand? How can you speak to us in the middle of our strategy? Can you inform what we think you've called us to do? And it's always helpful to have that person on the team as well who is always throwing the prayer flag, right? And we did this the other day. We had this big strategy meeting with our board, and our board is a group of lay guys that are just awesome, and they keep me accountable, and I can't fire them, and they can fire me, and we do life together, and community group, and prayer, and one of the guys on there is just a beast when it comes to prayer. And we had all this and he just sent this email, just a couple lines, something like this: let's make sure we don't get ahead of God. And I was so mad when I read it. But he was so right. He was so right. And it causes us to kind of back up and go, okay. I mean, you need that prayer Nazi on your team. You need that. They're going to throw the flag. They're going to be like, I'm not letting this go. We're going to seek God. Now, that can go the other way, too, where we're always praying and we're never strategizing. And we're always like so pietistic and everything is so spiritual and everything is so you don't want that, because you want to get some stuff done, right? And you want to accomplish great things for God and have right ambition. But somehow that tension needs to be present on your team. How do we do strategy? How do we do prayer? And this is, JB talked about this, generalization and specialization. What can we focus on? When can we focus on where we're most gifted? When can we do this? You're going to have seasons. All those books that, the Buckingham stuff, focus on your strengths. And that is true. And it also messes up a lot of people. Because what happens is, I remember we hired a guy one time, and he came in, and we had a specific job description that he agreed to, and we hired him. And then he came in, and he's like, hey, I know this stuff's on my job description. This is the stuff I'm going to do because this is the stuff I'm good at. That did not go well. I'll just say that hire did not go well. And there is a reality that there are things that only you can do, lead pastor especially. But in the early days, and I don't care even if it's now you're in a mega church, there are times and seasons where you have to do things that you're just not, that you're weak in, that you feel weak doing. And so you just got to know, is this a time that I can specialize? Is this a time where I can take this person who's doing like 4 things, and we can just focus it down to one thing? It's a Holy Spirit thing. You don't know. You have to discern. And you're going to be in this constant dance between, taking on too much. If someone's competent, they're going to take on more than they really should. Have you noticed this? They're just going to keep loading up the weights and doing squats. They're going to do it. And you, with wisdom, are going to have to go, I'm going to pull off a couple of these weights. I'm gonna refocus you here. And you've got to have people on your team that realize, there are seasons where we're all there's work that I need to do, and sometimes there's work that we need to do. So I need to be pulled in, even though I hate charts and graphs and budgets. And I mean, it's just not what makes me come alive. I got to be in those meetings sometimes. Sometimes I'm protected from that kind of stuff. You just need to discern and know where that is for you. But you're constantly going to be in that tension. When can we focus on where we're most gifted? Ask that question. And don't be afraid of every time you meet to energize people with that. Because part of the deal is they're sacrificing, they're suffering, they're doing things they don't love because they love the church and they love you. But this gives them hope to know that you're asking that question. One day, by God's grace, if he sends the leaders, and let's beg for the Lord of the harvest to send forth laborers, one day, maybe by God's grace, we'll be able to focus a little more. Last thing is development versus delegation. Question here is, who can I hand what to? Now, if I could answer that question, I could retire, right? Who needs to do what? Early days of the church, I just needed, honestly, we just needed a lot of people to do stuff. Just hand out bulletins and run the PowerPoint and run the sound and there was no time for me to get niched, focused, nuanced training for all these people. We were just trying to make it. We were just trying to survive. I wanted a nice little church that we could plant a few churches. And church planting had not gone well in this city. And I was just like, Lord, if we can so I was just survival mode. And so just get some stuff done. But you reach a point, and if you can do it early on, even better, where you say, you know what? It's not just giving people stuff to do and giving them some tools. It's actually thinking, what can this person become? Not just what can they do, what could they become? With enough training, with enough community, with enough connection, what would it look like for me to actually invest in that person or to get some people to invest in that person? We said this early on as a church, and I don't know who said it first, it wasn't me, but the phrase was, we don't want to use people to get ministry done. We want to use ministry to get people done. Rip that off and use it, because that gives fuel to your volunteers and the people that are sacrificing. If they know that your ultimate heart is not just them being used for the church. Well, it's for the church. Yeah, but you're the embodiment of the vision. So a lot of times it looks like that you're using them, lead pastor or lead ministry leader. They know it's the church, but it feels a lot like you. It really does. And so what does it look like then to be able to help them become something as they serve, right? We don't want to use people to get ministry done. We want to use ministry to get people done. And so you're going to be in this constant dance between, all right, we're going to give them a few tools and do the best we can with delegation, try not to advocate, but we're going to be close to that line because we don't have it all together. So get that done, and then we've got this development thing, and I'm supposed to make disciples of these people. They're not just making copies. I have to make disciples, and so you're just going to be back and forth all the time with these tensions. And it's going to be a very difficult thing for you to navigate. It's going to be a very difficult thing for you not to jump on one ditch or the other. But this is your opportunity as a leader. This is why you're a leader. Because you can make these decisions. And you can hear God within the context of your team, and you can lead out in this. But especially those of you who are early on in your ministries, you're going to have to take the lead, and you're going to have to honor these tensions, and you're going to have to live within them.